The house beyond the swamp. It all started with the disappearance of a little girl named Sarah. She was 10 years old. She lived in the small town of Gravesmouth, Louisiana, and one day, she simply didn't come home after school. The police searched the whole area, but it was useless. The only clue was a trail of footprints leading to an old path that disappeared into the swamps, beyond which stood an abandoned house. Locals had long avoided that place. The house had been there for nearly 100 years. Rumor had it that it once belonged to a widow who was accused of witchcraft in the early 1900s. They said she cursed the town before vanishing. Since then, no one lived there, and even hunters stayed away. The swamps seemed to breathe with malice. A few days after Sarah vanished, 3 teenagers from her school, Jake, Marissa, and Tommy, decided to go there at night to see if the stories were true. They didn't believe in legends. They took flashlights, a phone with a camera, and headed toward the swamp. As they approached the house, the air grew unnaturally thick. No wind, no sounds, everything was still. The front door was open. Inside, it smelled of dampness, rot, and something unnatural. The house was empty, but the floor was covered in fresh mud, like someone had been walking there recently. Upstairs, they found a room filled with children's toys. The dust on the floor had been disturbed. Someone or something had been there. Suddenly, Marissa screamed. On the wall, scratched in something sharp, were the words, "I see you." Below was a drawing of a little girl with hollow eyes. They decided to leave, but when they went downstairs, the door was shut. Jake yanked the handle. It wouldn't budge. Then they heard a voice, a child's voice. It called out, "Help me." It was coming from the basement. Tommy, the bravest, went down first. The others followed. The basement was covered in dirt and mold, but at the far end there was a hatch. A soft knocking came from beneath it. Jake opened it. All they saw was darkness. Then a pair of eyes, black without pupils. Something began to climb up. The teens panicked and ran upstairs, but the lights began to flicker and the walls seemed to breathe. Groans and scratching came from beneath the floorboards. They smashed a window and escaped, cutting themselves on the glass. When they returned to town, the police didn't believe them. The next day, Tommy disappeared. A week later, Jake remained, but he wasn't the same. He sat in the hospital, muttering, "She came for us, and she'll come for you." He hanged himself a month later. On the wall of his hospital room, someone had scratched the words, "The house waits." The house still stands today. Sometimes people hear a child's laughter drifting from a swamp, but the locals don't search for the missing anymore. They know that if someone goes there, they're not coming back. Highway 9. The final turn in northern Alabama, there's a stretch of old road, Highway 9. It hasn't been used in years. The asphalt is cracked, the signs rusted, and the trees on either side seem to lean in toward each other, trying to hide the road from view. Locals call it the final turn, and they warn, if you turn onto it, you won't come back. The story begins in 1998, when a young truck driver named Brian Sanders was driving through a storm on his way to Birmingham. Due to heavy rain and traffic on the main highway, he decided to take a detour. His GPS suggested an old route, Highway 9. Brian took the turn, unaware that it would be his final one. At first, everything was calm, just rain and trees closing in on both sides. But the further he drove, the stranger it became. The radio started picking up odd static, like someone was whispering into the speakers. The headlights reflected strange figures in the bushes, almost like someone was watching him. He passed an old sign where someone had written in red paint, "Turn back." After another half mile, he saw a woman on the side of the road, dressed in white, drenched to the bone. Her hair covered her face. She just stood there, motionless. Brian didn't want to stop, but the truck began slowing down on its own. He pressed the gas, but the engine seemed to stall. When the truck finally stopped, the headlights flickered and the woman disappeared. But her footprints in the mud led to the cab. A knock came from behind. Someone was knocking on the truck door. Brian quickly sped forward. The engine sputtered for a moment, then roared back to life. He drove blindly until he saw a dimly lit gas station. He pulled over, got out, and went inside. The station looked like it belonged to another time. Everything was old, the register mechanical, and there was a rotary phone. Behind the counter sat a man in his 60s with a cloudy gaze. "You from Highway 9? He asked. Brian nodded. "Then you don't have much time." The old man pulled out a piece of paper and wrote, Don't turn around. Don't open the doors. Don't trust the mirrors. And don't talk to her. Who? Brian asked. The old man remained silent. Then he vanished. Literally vanished. As if he had never been there. Brian ran outside. The gas station was gone. All that remained was an empty field and an old sign that read, "Welcome back." He was still there, on Highway 9. He drove, but now the road seemed to disappear. The headlights shone into nothingness. The GPS was broken, and the fuel gauge was stuck. He saw the woman again, but now she was right next to the cab, staring at him through the glass. He closed his eyes, recalling the note. Don't talk, don't open, don't look. But she started knocking, slowly, monotonously. Then she began whispering his name. The voice was soft, childlike, as if he was hearing it not with his ears, but from within. Brian never made it home. They say his truck was found 2 months later, far off the highway, deep in the woods. The gas tank was full, inside the cab. Nothing except for a mirror on which someone had written with a finger, "You looked after all."